as well.
The Assembly is now in session. Assembly Member Silva notices the absence of a quorum. The Sergeant-at-Arms will prepare the chamber and bring in the absent members. The clerk will call the roll.
Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Calderon, Campos, Carter, Cedillo, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Davis, Dickinson, Donnelly, Ing, Fior, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Furutani, Gaines, Galgiani, Garrick, Gatto, Gordon, Gorell, Grove, Hagman, Halderman, Hall, Harkey, Hayashi, Hernandez, Hill, Huber, Waso, Huffman, Jeffries, Jones, Knight, Lara, Logue, Lowenthal, Ma, Mansour, Mendoza, Miller, Mitchell, Monning, Morrell, Nastande, Nielsen, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Yamada, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, members, a quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papademos, to offer the day's prayer.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, all people benefit from your blessings, since you make your sun rise on the evil and the good. All people benefit from your blessings, even though they may not show even an ounce of thanks. But we, Lord, thank you this day for all your gifts. because we know that as soon as we do, our faith will become stronger, we will come closer to you, and we will be able to see all the good things you do for us every day more clearly. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Garrick as he leads us in the pledge. Mr. Garrick.
Placing your right hand over your heart, please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and our nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Friday, January 13, 2012. The Assembly met at 9 a.m. Honorable Finoma, Speaker Pro Tem.
Mr. Calderon moves and Ms. Conway seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills, will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I request unanimous consent to suspend the rules to allow Assembly members Cedillo and Hall to have guests and photographers on the floor.
Without objection.
Also, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow members Bradford, Wachowski to speak on adjourn in memory.
Without objection.
Also request unanimous consent to suspend Joint Rule 62A and Assembly Rule 56 to allow the Appropriations Committee to meet and to hear AB 236 by Mr. Swanson on Thursday, January 19, upon adjournment of session in room 4202, pending re-referral from the Revenue and Taxation Committee.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we're going to object to this motion this time. We have not seen the amendments go across the desk. We don't know what we're voting for, so we're asked that the members either abstain or vote no on this motion at this point.
Okay, so Mr. Hagman objects to this file notice waiver. We're going to take a roll call vote. Mr. Calderon asks for an aye vote. Mr. Hagman asks for a no vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Calderon moves the call. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, at the request of the author, please send the following bills to inactive file item 15 AB 662.
Without objection, clerk will note. Okay, we're supposed to have some guests here today. Okay, we're going to go to business on the daily file. Okay, we have 3 bills to take up today. Mr. Amiano's bill, Mr. Jeffries' bill, and Miss Brownlee's bill. Is Miss Brownlee ready? Miss Brownlee, file item 16, AB 1199. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1199 by Assemblymember Brownlee, an act relating to school bonds.
Miss Brownlee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 1199 is a very simple bill. It does one thing, and that is to authorize school districts to extend the term of appointment on a local bond Citizens Oversight Committee from 4 years to 6 years. Building schools take a long time. It makes sense to have the same members oversee a life of a project, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote. I will add that the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Turlickson, supports this bill, as well as the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 0. Measure passes. File item 14, AB 1047. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1047 by Assemblymember Jeffries, an act relating to vehicles.
Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 1047 deals with motorcycle safety checkpoints across the country. Law enforcement agencies have been stepping up efforts to promote motorcycle safety. However, in some cases, these efforts appear to have resulted in motorcyclists being singled out as a group and subjected to motorcycle-only checkpoints. These motorcycle-only checkpoints have come under much scrutiny and are currently being challenged in court in other states. AB 1047 will simply prohibit law enforcement agencies that receive grant monies for a motorcycle safety program from using that money for the implementation of a motorcycle-only checkpoint. This bill has bipartisan support. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Ms. Torres.
I have a question of the author in regards to banning checkpoints, because I know that this has been...
Without objection.
This has been a critical issue on the floor regarding vehicle checkpoints. To give you a little background, I spent many years riding the back of a motorcycle with my husband, who owned a motorcycle. Never once were we targeted or did we encounter a checkpoint. So why is this bill necessary?
The bill basically is prohibiting something from taking place in California that is starting to occur in other states. It's very similar to a scenario if you drove only a Ford Mustang or a Chevy Camaro, and law enforcement saying we simply are going to target you because what you are driving or what you are riding, not because you've committed any specific infraction or violation. And so because there is litigation underway, there are motorcycle groups that are complaining that they believe this is starting to occur in California, although we've not verified it. We've worked with law enforcement and the police chiefs and come up with this bill, and it's ready to go.
On my own time?
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I would urge a no vote on this bill. I don't see the necessity of it. And as I stated before, having spent many years riding the back of a motorcycle with my husband, I would not want to discourage police departments at ensuring that speed limits and motorcycle racing, which is a huge problem, specifically in the Los Angeles area on Mulholland Drive, we want to make sure that the police departments are able to monitor those incidents and that we do not handicap them in ensuring public safety is the top priority for the state. As the author stated, this is not an issue in California, and I would urge a no vote.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today as a lifelong motorcycle rider. I still have my first motorcycle, a Honda 55, big 5 horsepower that I've ridden for years around the ranch and enjoy it tremendously. But I have a question for the author.
Without objection.
Does this bill address anything to do with motorcycle racing?
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding here. The bill does not prohibit targeted enforcement. So if you do have an area such as Mulholland Drive or others where you have motorcyclists doing speeding on a regular basis or on a frequent occurrence, law enforcement is still permitted to go in there and do targeted enforcement by way of radar or other heavy patrol using the grants for that effort. And if you had an area where you had loud mufflers, loud exhaust, they could still go in and do the decibel meter readings with targeted enforcement. It just prohibits basically saying, because you are riding a motorcycle, you are guilty and must be pulled into a checkpoint. That's how this bill handles it.
Thank you. Thank you for your quick response and accurate. I'm going to urge an aye vote. This is a good bill. Please vote aye.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Staying on? Okay. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 47, noes 5. Measure passes. File item 7, AB 832. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 832 with amendments by Assemblymember Amiano.
AB 832 with amendments. Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. These amendments place intent language in the bill to call on the legislature to codify standards established by the State Board of Equalization for the valuation of software embedded in business personal property. Previous opposition to the bill are neutral with these amendments. I respectfully ask for an aye vote on these amendments.
Okay, without objection, we can take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Out to print and back on file. Yes. Pursuant to Assembly Rule 77.2, I am re-referring the following bill to committee. File item 7, AB 832, Amiano to the Rules Committee. Second reading, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 482 and Assembly Bill 236 with amendments.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments. Okay, there's one motion on call. We're going to lift the call on file notice waiver to suspend Joint Rule 62A. Clerk will post. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 24. Motion carries. Mr. Cedillo, would you like to introduce your guests?
Madam Chair and members, I am very pleased to welcome a group much like ours, a legislative leadership body group from the state of Jalisco, Mexico. This group is here today because they have an interest and a tremendous sense of appreciation for the work that we engaged in last year in passing the California DREAM Act. With us today is a group that is a multi-partisan group. In Mexico, they have more than two parties who are engaged in their democratic process, and their legislative bodies are reflective of that democracy. And so today, let me introduce on the floor Assemblywoman Olga Araceli Gomez Flores, who is the president of the Metropolitan Affairs Commission, something like our urban affairs. Also, let me introduce Assemblywoman Ana Berta Guzman Alatorre, who is the president of the Electoral Affairs Commission. And finally, let me introduce Javier Gil Olivo, President of the Education Commission. They are also joined by Professor Samuel Schmidt, who lives and works in Los Angeles, Ms. Guillermo Tovar Partida, who is the Technical Secretary for the Metropolitan Affairs Commission, and joined by their very capable staff, Ms. Emma Juarez Garcia and Mr. Rigoberto Rodriguez. I'd like to take a moment to recognize them for the work in promoting higher education, for their support of the California DREAM Act. They have passed a resolution in their legislative body supporting our efforts. They have created a scholarship for a DREAM student who wants to achieve their dreams in higher education. Please let the California State Assembly welcome our colleagues from the state of Jalisco, Mexico.
Okay, Senate third reading, there are none. Mr. Calderon?
Yeah, requesting as consent to return to motions and resolutions.
Without objection.
Pursuant to Rule 78, I'm requesting or giving one-day notice of intent to remove file item A2 from the inactive file.
Without objection, clerk will note. Okay, we've got a consent calendar. We are at the second day consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the second day consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1337 by Assemblymember Alejo, an act relating to family law.
Okay, clerk will open the roll on the consent calendar. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0.
And Assembly Bill 801.
Aye 65, no 0. The consent calendar is adopted. This concludes the business on the daily file. We will now move to adjourn in memories and announcements. 2 members were approved for adjourn in memories today. Mr. Bradford and Mr. Wajkowski. Mr. Wajkowski.
Madam Speaker, members, we're adjourning today in memory of Ricardo Arenas. Mr. Arenas was a high school Spanish and Portuguese teacher in Fremont, California for over 35 years. He was a neighbor of mine. Mr. Arenas was a very proud Mexican-American who taught his kids the value of education. He had 6 children, my parents had 7, and all 6 of his kids graduated from university. 3 of them from San Jose State, 2 from Stanford, and 1 from Mills College. What Mr. Arenas did that might be lacking today sometimes with people in our community is that he really cared about students. He used to lead a group of students down to Mexico and Caravana Mexicana, where my sister participated and had her first opportunity to go outside the United States and live on their own in an education abroad circumstance. He also was excellent with finding jobs for high school students at Long's Drug Store. There's a joke around Fremont that if you worked at Long's Drug Store, Mr. Arenas must have gotten you a job. And he was a fantastic mentor for young teachers that were going into the profession and taking the time to sit with them and teach them about the profession of teaching. So I ask everybody to adjourn in memory of Mr. Arenas.
Thank you. And Mr. Bradford? Mr. Bradford? Adjourn in memory?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to adjourn in memory of Ms. Marilyn K. Thomas, who is the mother-in-law of Ms. Davina Fleming, who is the principal consultant on the Utilities and Commerce Committee. Ms. Thomas was born December 7, 1946, and lived a full and fruitful life, raising 5 children, Alden, Charles, James, Angela, and Arthur. She was born and raised in Oakland, California, where she attended Shiloh Baptist Church. In 2009, she moved to Elk Grove to be closer to her son, James, and her daughter-in-law, Davina, and her grandchildren. She played a major role in raising her young grandchildren, James Jr. and Janai. As a homemaker, grandmother, and active member of her church, she touched and enriched the lives of many. Although her passing is untimely at the age of 65, her memory will be celebrated and will live on in the hearts of her family and friends. I ask you to join me in adjournment. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. The session schedule is as follows. Wednesday, January 18th, floor session at 9:30 a.m. Tomorrow will also be the State of the State address. Thursday, January 19th, floor session at 9 a.m. Friday, January 20th, no floor session or check-in. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Mr. Fior.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the on adjournment today, the Judiciary Committee will meet in the Rules Committee room.
Okay, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves and Ms. Conway seconds that this House stands adjourned until Wednesday, January 18th at 9:30 a.m. Quorum call is lifted.